Welcome. Big edition of ACC Baseball Etc. coming your way, as always, presented by Pitch Logic, the system used by players, coaches, scouts, and instructors at all levels of play, from the youth leagues to the big leagues. The easy-to-use and affordable technology makes the platform accessible to every player at every level. All the metrics, all the features used at the highest level. You can go to pitchlogic.com for more information. Danny Graves is with me. I'm Daron Vaught. Gravy, I'm wearing my Pitch Logic swag. I don't know if you've gotten yours in the mail from our good friends at Pitch Logic yet, but I got it and decided I would wear it for the recording of today's show.
Well, mine is dirty because I wore it over the weekend to my son's hockey game.
Nice.
So, yeah. Because it works perfectly, because I usually try to dress warm because it's always freezing in there. But I had a vest on where I left the vest open, like a puffer vest, and you could see the blue laces up top and up bottom. Yeah, it was so legit.
Nice. It's a good look. Look. Appreciate the guys from Pitch Logic sending us some cool gear. We always
so soft and
gear.
Comfy too, man.
Oh, it's look, if I've learned anything about Pitch Logic, it's that they don't do anything even medium quality. It's high quality. This is like this nice tri-blend type t-shirt. I mean, it's super comfortable. Yeah. So, but I expect nothing less from them.
That's right.
Okay. We got a lot to talk about. This is a big weekend.
Yeah.
Big weekend in ACC baseball. First full weekend of conference play, even though conference play began a week prior. This was the first weekend that everybody was in a conference series. And we had some pretty big movers. I'm contemplating where to start here, Gravy, but I think it's going to be with those biggest movers. Florida State, I mean, they battered Notre Dame, sweeping the Irish. They got all three victories. The Seminoles are still undefeated, 18-0, entering this new week of play. And they went from unranked to number 12 in the newest D1 baseball rankings. That's a big jump.
And they beat number 6 Florida in their weekday game against them. So it's no shock that they're ranked as high as they are. I mean, I know people were saying they should have possibly broke the top 25 even a week ago, but I think they proved now by beating Florida and then, an ACC opponent, sweeping them, and they're still undefeated. I don't even know if there's any other undefeated teams left in D1, but they deserve to be up there. They haven't done anything to prove that they shouldn't be there. Their pitching is great. Their hitting is great. Everything is just falling perfectly for them. So I love it. I love it that they're ranked so high right now.
Yeah. And I think over on the main D1 pod, I think Aaron Fitt has taken a lot of grief because prior to the Florida game, his argument was, well, they haven't really played anybody. And there's something to that, especially look, we can talk in nuance. We can talk in, the understanding that Florida State did not begin the season in the rankings. Mm-hmm. That matters, right? Whether we like it or not, whether we think there's merit to it or not, there's a business in creating and updating those rankings from the preseason on. So, I think it's fair to say that they had to get so far into doing what they're doing before they would become ranked. And again, just justifiably, they're up pretty high, number 12 in the country. You mentioned the game against Florida. Kyle Peterson was on the air for that one. I forget which network it was on or which ESPN channel it was on, but he did that game, and I texted him a little bit afterward, and he thinks they're for real. He's actually pretty certain that they're for real. Two legit starters in Leiter and Arnold. The team can really hit. Cam Smith, obviously, I didn't need to text with KP to know that Cam Smith is a dude and is an all ACC caliber player, maybe even an ACC player of the year candidate by the time we're all said and done. They're really good. They're solid top to bottom. And I think it's a kind of what we expected, right? Like we said coming into the season, there's no way they were going to be bad again. No way.
Right.
So I think this is almost what we expected out of Link Jarrett. They don't have the flamethrower Gavin Adams for the remainder of the year, but it sounds to me like they've got plenty of depth in the bullpen without him. And like, I think it's just a really solid, really complete team. Obviously Florida was a test. They will have a test this weekend with Clemson. That should be an interesting one because we've sort of had a passing of the crown from week to week within the ACC since conference play started, right? It was Wake Forest, and then they got beaten by Duke, and then Duke got beaten by Clemson. So we've got sort of this like King of the Ring style week to week thing going on with our matchups. So who knows? Maybe this time next week we're talking about Florida State is legitimately the best team in the conference.
Right. Well, I think a couple things. I get what Aaron Fitt was saying about they haven't played anybody, and that's how a lot of teams are at the beginning of the season. And there's a lot of merit to that, but at the same time, you still have to be on your game because you do see teams losing to teams they shouldn't be losing to at the beginning of the season. Even the best teams in the country shouldn't be losing to certain teams, early in the season. So I get that they haven't played anybody, but they have. So baseball is a funny game. We all know that. And Kyle, if Kyle saw them and said they're for real, Kyle's not going to sugarcoat it, about a talented team or not. So I trust what KP says about these guys. And with those two starters, even losing a bullpen arm, those two starters can still carry you pretty far. As long as they continue to pitch the way that they're pitching. And then going into this weekend against Clemson, it makes it more relevant now, right? That Florida State is who they are. Now, I think Link Jarrett knew who they were and knew how good they could be and knew that they were going to surprise a lot of people. We kind of had that inkling. But at the same time, you look at the top 25 the whole year until now, nobody's talking about Florida State. So if it stayed that way, Florida State and Clemson wouldn't have been as exciting. But now it's exciting again, right? Now you got this almost the rivalry of seeing who's going to take over for next week and then the following week. So this is the beauty of baseball, and I love it. I love that Link Jarrett has just made this team relevant again so quickly.
It's too early to talk about things in these terms, but does it feel with, of course, the great Mike Martin passing before the season starting and FSU starting the year 18-0, like this feels like some good mojo. It's way too early to claim there's a team of destiny or whatever, but like it would feel so right if this was a year that Florida State was really good and in contention until very, very late, right? It would feel right. We talk a lot about, Clemson getting back into the mix for a conference championship last year, and it just sort of feeling right because the league feels better when Clemson is good at or near the top of it. I would claim the same thing with like a Miami, who we'll get to. It's better when they're good, and they can't all be good, right? We're going to run into this. I think every team in the ACC is a regional team until they're not. But that's just my positive thinking when it comes to such matters. But no, this feels like it could be a really, really fun ride for Florida State.
Yeah, and I think the whole 11 thing that you talk about, if that sparks this team, if they use that as motivation, like as do it for 11 or whatever it may be, it's working. It's working for them. But I think it also got to remember that Link Jarrett actually was able to have this team to be able to go out and recruit like he wanted to recruit and to get who he wanted to get. Not to say that he he was kind of shorthanded the year before in his first year, but he kind of was, if you think about it, right? Like he got there late enough and he didn't get to go get the big transfer guys. And this year he got to do everything from the start. So I feel like that has a lot to do with it too. You know, Link Jarrett is not going to go somewhere and just continue to lose. You know, that last year was kind of that one of those years. Well, okay, let's just get through this year and then we'll start from scratch. And here we go. And now look at them. And I'm not saying they're going to be the best team in the country. I'm not saying right now that they're going to win the College World Series, but they are very, very relevant. So I think people need to keep their eyes open and seeing what this team's doing.
Yeah. Others in the new top 25 rankings, by the way, Clemson with the series victory over Duke elevates itself to number 4.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty significant. Duke's still the second highest ranked team in the ACC. They're number 9. Florida State at 12. Virginia with the series victory over Wake Forest jumps to 14. Wake is down to 16 after losing conference series, their first 2 of the year. Virginia Tech, like Florida State, new to the top 25. Hokies are at number 19, and UNC is still hanging in there at number 20 in the rankings. So no NC State after they got swept by Georgia Tech. They have dropped out. Virginia Tech's really interesting. John Sheff in our preseasoning conversation made the parallel to the 2022 version of Virginia Tech, which won 45 games, hosted a super regional. And it wasn't that, okay, this is the same team, but sort of the makeup and the mojo coming into the season he thought was very similar. Their starting pitching has proven to be really, really good. It's a team that we knew coming in was going to hit. Carson DeMartini, I think, is going to be ACC Player of the Week as of right now. Those haven't been announced yet, but he hit 5 home runs.
Yeah, is that a misprint? Like,
no,
I was looking. Like, that is unbelievable. Good for him, man. That's awesome.
And you know, he's sort of in the middle of that lineup that, again, we knew was going to have a lot of hitability, especially the infield. It's maybe the best infield group in the country by some regards. So Virginia Tech's really, really interesting. I thought Miami could have maybe worked their way into the top 25 conversation this week. We've got this. Yeah, I'm going to bring up Fit again in the main pod. He talks sometimes about tiering the ACC, and at the beginning of the year, it looked like maybe it was going to be Wake Forest, and then sort of the B level where Clemson and Duke and some others, you know, arguably whoever was going to work into that mix. I don't know that we have tiers yet. Like I just don't think that's a thing. I know a lot of teams are really good. I think, you know, Clemson is obviously really good. If we have a top tier, it's them and maybe Duke, and maybe Florida State is kind of in the in-between. Wake Forest is kind of in the in-between. Virginia is a team that we know is really good, has sort of this it factor. They just find ways to win, but we all have concerns over their pitching staff. There's just Virginia Tech's really good. We've talked about Miami, and we kind of like the verve that they're playing with. North Carolina is going to be able to hit with anybody we mentioned, but they've got this really young pitching staff. Like there's just so many teams that are good and competitive. It's tough to tier it out right now.
Yeah, well, I think Fit may have been onto something when Wake Forest was the elite of the ACC. And, you know, all of last year and the beginning of this year, preseason going into, they still were the A+ team. But I think other teams have caught up. Wake Forest has struggled a little bit. So now it puts everybody else on the same tier, in my opinion. There's not one team that is just going to be like last year. I was, you know, every week Wake Forest is the best team in the country. Wake Forest is the best team in the country, hands down, all around. But it's not like that. You don't have one team that is like just considerably way better than another team in this ACC conference. Clemson right now is the highest ranked team, but Duke is still good. Florida State's undefeated. North Carolina, Virginia, Miami did win series against Virginia and North Carolina, just throwing that out there. But anyway, so these teams, there's so many really good teams. And one thing I want to bring up too, like before I forget, this conference is so good, and we know how Florida State's pitching staff is so good. Well, their pitching staff's leading ERA in conference play, but it's a 4. Like that, a 4 is not. I mean, it's okay, but that shouldn't be leading the whole conference in ERA. But that's how good this conference is, right? That's how good the offenses all around this conference are.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you mentioned that, because Wake Forest was the preseason number 1. They were far and away the best team in the league last year. They did not lose a conference series last year, and they've dropped both of their first 2. It feels necessary that we should try to diagnose what's going on. The pitching staff has not been what we thought it was going to be early on to this point, and there's still plenty of time for them to become, what they have been in recent vintage. But man, you want to talk about how important that Chase Burns transfer was? They might be 0-6. They might be 0-6 in conference play without him, Gravy.
Yeah.
And at this point, he is giving them basically a guaranteed win every weekend, right? I mean, with the runs that they're scoring, they lost the series to Virginia, but scored 30 plus runs.
Yeah.
So you only need a few on days that Chase Burns is going to start. He's
probably 2 or 3.
Yeah, right. He's practically giving them a win in every weekend start, and yet they're winless in terms of a full series so far.
Yeah.
Josh Hartle, okay. We have not talked about this yet, and part of it is because we didn't talk last week, but I also sort of wanted to wait to see how things panned out with this. Mm-hmm. From a pitching perspective, I'm not going to say this with like a hindsight 2020. I'm right. I was right. Sort of lean. Prior to that game 1, Hartle for Wake Forest versus Santucci versus Duke. Mm-hmm. I get it. We hyped it up as, man, this is a big time pitching matchup. It might be 2-1, the final score. But off the air prior to the game, I was looking at the numbers, and I mentioned to Larry Sorensen, I think Hartle's going to get knocked around in this one because it's a good Duke lineup. Mm-hmm. And again, looking at the numbers, there's something called, for pitchers, heart percentage, and it is meant to portray the percentage of their pitches that end up over the heart of the plate. So the middle third, both vertically and horizontally, right?
Yeah.
I think it would be safe to say, Gravy, that is not a place you want your pitches to end up more often than
right?
Not, right?
Uh-huh.
Okay. All right. And again, this is me. I'm not trying to assign causation where there isn't. This is me just simply being curious.
An observer. Yeah. Well, you're seeing something.
So I saw these numbers, these heart percentage numbers for Josh Hartle, who we know has it. He's got it, right? It's the full mix of pitches. It's big league stuff. Mm-hmm. And I haven't checked the updated numbers through the first 2 weeks of conference play, but I can't imagine they've gotten a lot better because he's gotten touched up in both starts. His heart percentages, even down to the very pitch, or the pitch by pitch numbers, were like well below the NCAA average. And I'm not saying that that's what's going on, that he's just leaving pitches out there, because I understand there's a possibility. This would be my question to you. Can the stuff be so good that is irrelevant?
You ready for me to answer?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I think the stuff can be good, but I think the stuff has to have something else too, as far as deceptiveness, as far as predictability. There's probably a book out on Josh Hartle. He's not going to like sneak up on anybody. Everybody knows what he throws. Everybody knows what he has. Everybody probably knows his tendencies. So that makes it to where you have to work a little bit harder to be more deceptive, or to mix up your pitches, or pitching backwards, or whatever it may be. So I guess to answer your question, I don't think stuff can just be able to succeed over the heart of the plate. You need something else with your stuff. If you throw 100 miles an hour and you have a nasty slider, maybe you're going to get away with a lot more of just stuff over the heart of the plate.
Yeah.
But if you keep throwing stuff over the heart of the plate, they're going to catch up and they're going to hit it. So with Josh Hartle, I don't know what's happening with him right now, because his stuff is so good. Like, he commands all his pitches. But I don't think he's got the electric type stuff. If we're talking electric, like Chase Burns, he doesn't have stuff that just you can just wow people. He knows how to pitch. So to me, is there something with his mechanics? Is he opening up a little bit too soon to where the hitters can pick up the ball coming out of his hand a little too soon? Is his stride a little bit short, and he's not having a consistent release point, whatever it may be? And I do want to dive into that, a little bit later to see if I can see something. But I can tell you that Corey Mascara will find something if there's something mechanically wrong with him, or is there something physically not feeling 100%? Who knows? And this is all just speculation. I'm not saying that something's wrong with him, but something's off, because Josh Hartle shouldn't be getting hit like he's getting hit, right? Even though Duke is a great hitting team, and even though Virginia is a great hitting team, he still should be lasting more than an inning or two. He still should be getting these guys out. And that's no discredit to those offenses, but Josh Hartle is an elite pitcher. So something's off.
Yeah. Okay. If I may, I'm going to assign that as your homework from week to week. Figure out from the pitcher's perspective what that all means, and if there's anything to what I observed. Because I understand it could be a number of things. It could be, you talked about maybe teams are figuring him out. Maybe it's a predictable pitch sequencing with the 5 that he uses, right? Something like that could make it easier to detect what's going to come in a certain count, in a certain situation, that sort of thing. But it struck me as really odd. And again, I haven't looked at the updated numbers. So he's got 2 starts added onto the numbers that I'm talking about. But the changeup was really the only pitch that consistently was ending up outside of the zone. But that makes sense, right? That's the point of a changeup, is for it to look like it's going to be in the zone and then it drops out of it. So, he was doing, I assume, what was intended with that one. But I don't know how intentional the heart percentages were with the other pitches. Because, there's such a thing as a pitch that's got so much run that it comes last second. It kind of jumps into the heart of the plate, and that can eat you up if you think it's going to end up somewhere else, right? So I just didn't want to assume that heart percentage was going to equate to, okay, this is flat and right over the plate, because that obviously is not ideal.
Right. Well, I think if you're throwing 95 with some sink, it could have late movement ending up over the heart of the plate, and you're still going to be able to, get guys to miss the barrel. So, I mean, it's interesting. I want to take a deep dive into this and see, because there is some, validity to what you say hindsight's 2020, but you saw something and it came to fruition, right? So there's some validity there. It's not like you're just like picking something up and having a hot take and here you go.
Yeah. Okay. That's your homework.
Yeah. Yeah. I got the page up right now. 643
Nice.
charts. We're going to check it out later.
as we continue to try to figure out Wake Forest and what they are, I will say this: they've got a defense problem in a major way.
Yeah.
Play behind the plate was not good for them versus Duke, and I don't think I'm saying anything groundbreaking. This is with them, bringing in like Cam Gill. The Wofford transfer was the guy who was behind the plate for them for the majority of that series. And Gill came in with a like sterling defensive reputation. Mm-hmm. It was even like, is he going to hit enough to be able to play every day for Wake Forest? That was kind of the conversation. Now BC coach Todd Interdonato is the one who coached him at Wofford. And Todd had told me, prior to that series, he said Cam Gill is the best defensive catcher I've ever been around as a coach. Really? And he went as far as to say that like the catching piece, the defensive piece, he goes, I would trust him at literally any level of baseball. So really? Like it's there clearly.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not just going to dismiss. I'm not going to dismiss what Todd Interdonato tells me about a catcher just because of one bad weekend or whatever, right? Yeah. So I think it's there, and it's going to be part of the Wake Forest figuring it out. In addition to that, though, they had 4 errors in the series clincher against Virginia yesterday, including the game-winning run being scored on a fielding error. Like,
yeah, and weren't a lot of those with 2 outs? A lot of those runs were scored with 2 outs. Yeah.
Yeah, for the series, for sure. They got to clean that up, especially when, again, it's a new team, so I don't want to be doing this forever, but they were the preseason number 1 based on the pieces they have currently. The margins are not as large of gaps as they were last year.
Well, when you come in as that, you're going to get critiqued a little more for the little things that you do wrong, because when you are supposed to be the best team in the country, you
got muted mid-sentence there.
Okay. What about now?
Yep, you're good.
You good?
Yeah, I got you. Do you hear me? You don't hear me now. Okay, yeah, then I can hear you. We're good.
Oh, great.
Okay, we're good. Carry on.
I can't hear you now. Now.
All right, you got me?
Live TV.
Here we go.
Yeah.
You got it. All right.
Yeah.
So
I was trying to get all comfortable and pull the cords out. So I'm just saying, like, back to what I'm saying, take 2. I think Wake Forest, they need to be ready for some constructive criticism and people picking apart little things that they're not doing right, basically. Because the best team in the nation going in preseason in the first couple weeks or however long it was, you're going to be under a microscope. In the year that they had last year, even though there's a lot of new guys, they're still going to be under a microscope. Yeah. So I think that comes with the territory.
I think too, it stands to reason. This league is way too competitive for the margins to not be razor thin. It's what makes a team like Virginia, if I can segue, so fascinating to me. Like, yeah, they gave up 30 runs, but they won the series over Wake Forest. Like, they just find ways, and we have no idea what their pitching staff is right now. Right?
Yeah.
Like
O'Connor's in the bullpen now.
O'Connor's out of the bullpen. Evan Blanco's been serviceable, but like he does not profile as a Friday guy. They went with Colin McKay this weekend, who's been okay. Jay Woolfolk had an okay start yesterday on Sunday, and like they're getting by. They're just getting by. They're making it work. I think we're going to look up. Maybe it's in 2 weeks. Maybe it's in 5 weeks. We're going to look up, and Virginia is going to have whatever their arrangement is for their pitching staff. They're going to have it figured out at least like well enough. And looking back at the season to that point, they're going to have all these wins that they had no business getting early on. So their record plus sort of the convergence of this is our best self is going to happen at this fortuitous time, right? Like, I just think we're going to look back in maybe 5, maybe 6 weeks, and they will have stolen these wins while not even being their best selves. And once they realize that, it's going to be scary. Virginia, to me, I think Virginia is going to be really, really scary. Maybe even tops in the league at that point, whenever that happens, right? But the integral point is going to be that happening. And if that doesn't happen, because we have a finite number of those weeks for teams to figure that out, if that doesn't happen, they're going to continue to sort of operate in this space where they need to piece things together to get wins. And not that that doesn't work for teams, it has for them to this point, but they don't want to be in that situation in 6 weeks.
Yeah, they don't want to be giving up 30 runs a weekend and hoping that they come up with a series win. Yeah, of course, Brian O'Connor is going to get that straightened out, because I can almost imagine that he's probably saying, "Man, how lucky we have been to be where we are right now, because we're not who we should be yet as a team."
Yeah.
But I mean, that's the thing. It's a long season. There's still a lot of games left. There's a ton of growth to be made. Some guys are going to probably out of nowhere start to shine, and some guys are going to start to struggle, and you're going to figure out who is going to help carry you through the ACC championship and then into a regional. But right now they're just doing what they can to win. And then that's what you got to do.
I already mentioned Georgia Tech with a sweep of NC State. That's a pretty impressive series sweep for me. I'm keeping my eye on Georgia Tech because they can hit. They can for sure hit. It feels like everybody in this conference can, though. So will that be enough by the time you play the majority of your conference schedule? But no, they're
right. There's never
really
been a question of Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech always hits. If anything, they can hit. They're going to come out mashing and try to outmash people. But this year, they're actually throwing the ball pretty well. Team ERA they're in the middle of the pack in the ACC. They're not down at the bottom in the cellar. So you got that type of offense, and you mix in some decent pitching. It's scary, man. Georgia Tech could be scary. They can sneak up on people. I know nobody's talking about them right now. Nobody's looking from the outside worried about Georgia Tech, but I think they're in the same boat like with Miami. Like these two teams, like nobody thinks that they're going to be competitive, but they're showing who they are right now, and it's great to see, man. I love this.
Did you see the locker room celebration after the sweep?
I did not.
It included a Georgia Tech themed hard hat being tossed on Danny Hall's head. And then he did the textbook coach thing and was doing this ridiculous old white man dancing in the middle of his team. we talk about mojo with certain teams, like
Uh-huh.
Florida State's got their mojo for obvious reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Miami is kind of like they're the team you don't want to mess with, both in between the lines and outside of the lines. Like they got some dog in them. They've got a lot of fight in them.
They feel the swag coming back. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Georgia Tech's got a little bit of that. Like that was a side of Danny Hall that we have not seen often over the years.
How about in like 30 years?
Maybe it's because the social media access did not grant us the
Maybe,
look at that we got. But also, it just occurred to me that it was like, okay, this is maybe, and the best coaches do it. This is maybe Danny Hall doing a little bit of adapting. He's got this great freshman class.
Yeah.
And the job for anybody gets harder and harder as the years go on, because it becomes more and more difficult to relate to younger and younger players, right? And again, the best to ever do it always adapt. They always find ways to relate.
Yeah.
That looked a little bit to me like that's what Danny Hall was doing.
That's so cool. That's awesome that you say that, because baseball is what? A game of adjustments, right? So you need to adjust to the generation that we have right now with baseball, with social media, all this stuff that is part of the world. If you're not going to adapt to it, it's going to be tough. And I can tell you right now, I would never imagine Danny Hall doing that. Never would have imagined that. Like, he's all business and we're going to play baseball. We're going to win these games. And then just to think about him doing that, but it's great that he is, now his team is probably going to feel a little bit looser and go out and play loose and have some fun and not have this pressure. And I'm not saying that they were pressure packed again with Danny Hall. I'm just saying, like, when your head coach is so loose and just kind of messing around with you, it's like, all right, as long as we keep playing and winning, our coach is going to be cool with us. He's going to be doing things with us like this. And you love that feeling, man. It's awesome.
Yeah. No, I'm really interested to see sort of how they continue. They're at North Carolina this weekend, so that's, right down the road from me. I think I'm going to have Duke at NC State. The games 1 and 3. The middle game is on linear. I'm not sure who's on that, but I'll have Friday, Sunday at NC State. But Saturday, I think I'm going to hop over and just catch Georgia Tech at UNC, the middle game of that series. So yeah, man, but there's we say it every week. There's so much great stuff happening in the ACC.
Yeah.
Like it has been, and I think is going to continue to be a wild ride this season.
Yeah. And, I know Wake Forest people don't want to hear this, and I have a good relationship with a lot of those people at Wake. And I don't mean this disrespectfully, but it's nice to not see them number one, because now they're going to have to work their way back up. I think they've been so good that they just go out and play. But Coach Walter, I was reading some of the stuff he says, we got to tighten it up. And you mentioned it defensively. Well, tighten it up defensively, get Josh Hartle back, and then climb your way back up. And then people are going to be scared of you again. I don't think they're very intimidated by Wake Forest at this moment, but I think people are starting to be intimidated a little bit by Florida State, Clemson, Duke, all these teams that, I know people have been high on Clemson for a while because they are good. Bakich has been great since he's been there, but like Duke keeps fighting their way up there, and we get to talk about other teams. And as much as I love talking about Wake Forest last year, all of last year, I want to talk about other teams too.
Yeah.
And how good or how great these other teams are,
Yeah. When Fit filled in last week, I asked him the question, Wake Forest getting knocked from the top, like, is that in totality, is it better for the league? And I would say, especially with this week, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 teams, 7 ACC teams in the top 20. Like, I'll take this any day over the far and away number 1 team in the country. But just because, like, every weekend we've got a series that's going to be competitive. It seemingly, the way the scheduling has worked out, every weekend we've had a series that is going to be for the top dog, using my air quotes, the current top dog in the conference. That's Florida State Clemson this weekend. This is way more fun than assuming, oh, Wake Forest's not going to lose a conference series all year and then being right in the end. This is way more fun.
Yeah, I love this. And that, you mentioned 7 in the top 20, and that NC State was 13. They get knocked out. So, I mean, there's plenty of teams, being on the verge of hitting that top 25. Even though NC State was 0-4 last week and they got knocked out, they're still a good team. Miami's a good team. Georgia Tech is a good team. This conference is so deep. So anyways, I just love the fact that we get to talk about different teams each week and how they just continue to impress and make this conference look even better.
And I'll say this too, before we move on to Hall of Name, different players too. And part of that is because we've got some injury type stuff happening currently. Nick Kurtz got banged up over the weekend, did not play in game 3 yesterday after only getting 1 at bat on Saturday, I think is how it went down. Hurt himself trying to make a diving play defensively. So my understanding is they're not super worried about it, but that's obviously something to monitor. Cam Cannarella is in sort of maybe like the Vance Honeycutt role from last year. Like, it's a shoulder injury. Cam is well enough to hit, so of course they're going to hit him, but it's been mostly DH for him, for Clemson. And because they're not giving it a full opportunity to be like shut down to heal, maybe this is speculating, but maybe that's really all we get of Cannarella this year, which is like, look, I'll take it. I love watching the guy play, so of course I'll take him at DH every day. And then some of the pitching for Wake Forest still yet to come around and be fully healthy, especially in their bullpen. So, with that in mind, we've gotten the chance to learn more about and talk about more players. We knew Charlie Bielenson was a great reliever.
Yeah.
He's the best closer in the country right now.
Yeah.
And that, that's awesome. That's a great emerging story in the conference. Tristan Smith had a great start over the weekend for Clemson. I think he's got a chance to sort of emerge as one of the top guys in the conference. The Florida State players, Cam Smith, Cam Leiter, Jamie Arnold, these are dudes that we were not talking about before. And not to mention the transfers that most teams have hit on really well. Daniel Cuvée is a freshman for Miami. Anyways,
Jason Torres at Miami
Torres is having a fantastic year.
Monster,
so I could gush about the individual names that we're getting to be exposed to and talk about more in depth. And that's a huge benefit to the league being so deep and the league being so good that again, is just a testament to, I would much rather have it this way than the way it was last year. It's great to have somebody in the national championship picture representing the ACC and having that to talk about. I think there's a chance we have multiple teams in that category late in the season, even despite the lack of a team in the top, 2-3 teams.
Right. I like the odds this year of more championship caliber teams. Last year I feel like it was Wake Forest, Virginia, and probably Clemson for a time there, especially late in the season when they got so hot. But now we're talking about 7 teams. It could be we're talking about 9 or 10 teams in a few weeks. There's so many different teams that have a possibility of being top 5, top 10 teams in the country. So it's exciting. I love the fact that Virginia Tech is relevant again. And I know it was only 1 year that they weren't. I love the fact that Florida State is relevant again. I know it was only 1 year that they weren't, but still, like, it makes this conference better when Florida State is good, when Virginia Tech is making noise, and even Louisville. Like, we haven't talked about them. They started off terribly, and now they're, I think, 13-5 overall. This conference is better when they're relevant too. So when we get to talk about these powerhouse schools that, have struggled in the past, but now we get to talk about them again, man, it just makes it easier to brag on how good the ACC is.
Yeah, it does. That's well said. Let's move on to Hall of Name. This is the part of the show where we let our closer, former big league and collegiate superstar closer Danny Graves, close out the show by giving us a glimpse into his lavish life as a former professional baseball player. Here's how it goes.
Lavish.
I've got a list of former teammates at every level of Danny's. I name one, and he's just going to go first thing that comes to mind, a story, an anecdote.
Word vomit.
Yeah, you're just word vomiting, whether it is, sometimes I say Ken Griffey Jr., and you're like, yeah, I got challenged to a street race by Ken Griffey Jr. one time at spring training. And, you don't turn down a challenge like that.
Right.
Sometimes I mention Pedro Martinez, and, you talk about having this mysterious missed phone call that you later found out was from Pedro Martinez when you became a member of the New York Mets. You can go back and listen to all of these.
See, and you have an uncanny memory too.
It would be worth, now that I'm talking about it, it would be worth compiling just Hall of Name, because obviously, like, the first episode we did was preseason last season. All of the ACC baseball stuff, if not most of it, is going to be outdated. Maybe it would be worth like cutting out just Hall of Name and turning that into its own feed somehow. Something to consider. Maybe we'll
dude,
I'll get to work on that.
Yeah.
I'm going to get to work
on that.
That
is brilliant.
Anyway.
So you have all those still like on file?
I mean, we should. People can go back and listen to them. So I think that's.
So that means we can go back and totally.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That'd be hysterical.
I think we can make that happen. That actually, that might be a good idea. I literally just came up with that. So
I know that's,
awesome. We're gonna move on to today's edition of Hall of Name. I forgot to mention Aaron Boone and Adam Dunn, and I can't remember who else. Was it Sean Casey that was at that concert, the Poison concert with you? That's another good one.
Yep.
All right, so I'm going to go. I've not brought up managers to you in this game yet, have I?
Nope.
Like your managers. Like Alex Cora, you played with and is a manager, but
Aaron Boone, same. But managers I played for.
Yes.
Yeah. All right.
Okay. Here's one of my all-time favorites.
I know which one you're going to say.
Jack McKeon.
Oh, that's not the one I thought you were going to say.
No?
No. I thought you were going to say Willie Randolph, because I know you were middle infielder when you played. Yeah.
Willie's a good dude. I like Willie a lot. Maybe next time. Let's go Jack McKeon.
Yeah. Trader Jack. So Jack was a piece of work. I think a lot of people didn't relate to Jack because he was kind of old school, but Jack was the guy who really gave me my opportunity to play, to pitch. Got traded from Cleveland. He was a manager in Cincinnati at the time in '97. I think he got hired maybe that year because somebody got fired earlier in the year. Anyways, so I get traded over there, and immediately he tells me, glad to have you. You're going to pitch here. We want you to, become some great player, blah, 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 all the nice things. And then he actually like put me in, like he let me pitch all the time. And there was a lot of people that didn't agree with his idea of baseball, because it was the old school, like Goose Gossage throw 3 innings to get a save way back in the day. It's not the 1 inning save. So he would throw me a lot. Like I was throwing so much. There was 1999. I had over 100 innings out of the bullpen. There was another reliever that had 100 innings out of the bullpen, and then another guy had 93. So 3 of us, over 300 plus innings out of the bullpen, and that's unheard of. Like guys out of the bullpen don't throw 100 innings. So people would always rag on him for it, but I praised him for it because he let me pitch. That's how he kind of ran with the hot hand. And if you're pitching good, as long as you felt good, he was going to go out there and let you pitch and let you stay out there. And I loved the fact that he let me pitch. So it developed me as a better pitcher, but that's not as interesting as what I'm going to tell you right now. So
good. The good part. Here we go.
Yeah, this is the good part. So Jack, he's a little bit older, and he was
now 93 years young, by the way.
Yeah.
Shout out Jack McKeon.
Yeah. Still kicking. Like, oh man, he's been in baseball for 80 of those 93 years too.
Yeah.
So he would sit at the end of the bench, after the game would start. He would sit there, and he was a big tobacco guy. So in the clubhouse, he'd have cigars. Like you would not see Jack without a cigar. So the whole clubhouse smelt of cigars, and some people love the smell of cigars. I think I did until that time, because you would leave and your street clothes smell like cigars because the whole clubhouse was cigar covered. But on the bench, clearly he wasn't allowed to have a cigar. So he would have chewing tobacco, so Red Man or Levi Garrett, and he would sit back just like this, Daron, like lean back up against the bench and have his arms folded. Sometimes he would have his eyes closed, and we weren't sure if he was sleeping or if he was just resting. But when he would spit, he wouldn't get up and go. He would be right here, and he'd go and just spit from here. So by the end of the game, his uniform's covered in tobacco. And it was the funniest thing. Like everybody knew, okay, the first inning, there's just a few drops there. By the 5th inning, there's almost covered. And by the end of the game, if he wasn't making pitching changes, his whole uniform would be just filthy with tobacco spit. And it was awesome. Loved him for that, because he didn't care. He absolutely didn't care. Yeah.
That's great.
Trader Jack, man.
Jack McKeon and I believe, have one thing in common. Would you be able to guess what it is?
Well, I know he's from North Carolina.
He is. Yeah. I am not originally from North Carolina, so it wouldn't be that, but it does pertain to that.
So same college?
Jack McKeon, Elon University, class of 1963. And that's where I've got a grad degree from. So both Elon University graduates. Although I'm relatively certain in 63 it would have been Elon College for him, and they would not have been the Phoenix. They would have been the Fighting Christians, which is their old mascot.
Really?
That's a thing.
Wow.
Wes Durham of ESPN he's an Elon grad as well, but he was a Fighting Christian, not
really.
A Phoenix. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's like an oxymoron, because Christians aren't supposed to fight.
Right.
Right. I mean,
all the best mascots are, right? Oxymorons.
Yeah. I mean, because us as Christians, we're supposed to be kind and gentle and forgiving.
Pacifist.
We're not supposed to fight.
Right. Yeah.
Maybe that's why they changed it to the Phoenix.
Probably.
Yeah. Oh, and another thing with Jack, he took over that team in Florida in 2003, and they ended up winning the World Series. So he's the manager of the All-Star game in 2004. And I made that team. And when I made the team in 2000, he was my manager in Cincinnati. So he knew it. I'd already been to one, and he came up to me and he's like, "Hey, do you want to pitch or do you want to just rest? Like, it's up to you." I'm like, "Oh my gosh." My arm was killing me at this time too, because the whole first half, I had 33 saves at the break. And I pitched every single day. And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, thank you for asking." I don't want to pitch. I just want to watch. So he's like, "You sit back and take it easy." And he gave me that opportunity. And I don't know of many managers that have done that with me, that was really cool that he did that. So I got to actually watch the All-Star game and enjoy every single bit of it and not have to worry about getting ready and pitching and all that. So
wait,
but
would you
I'd
have
love
told
Trader
him?
Jack.
Would you have told him no? Put me in the game. Had you never been to an All-Star game before? Was it easier to say no because it was your second?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
And if that was my first, I don't think he would have asked me that.
Sure.
Like he knew I had pitched in one, but if it was my first and he would ask me that, I would have been like, no. I need to pitch. I don't care if my arm hurts. I want to pitch. I have to say that I pitched in one.
Yeah.
So yeah, but it was cool that he gave me that opportunity. So
nice.
me and 3 other guys just sat there and watched.
Yeah. Who were the other 3? What do you remember about just like
it was Jason Schmidt, me, Jason Schmidt, Levon Hernandez, and Armando Benitez.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was great. And like in the 8th innings, I can't remember who the pitching coach was at the time, called down and said, okay, make sure, ask Danny if he wants to get an inning or get an out, because we can split the last inning with him and Eric Gagne. So I was sitting next to Gagne and I said, dude, I really don't want to pitch an inning. Can you get 3 outs? He's like, yeah, I don't care. I'll take it. So he took it for me. I'm like, I don't want, like they said, one of you can have a third and the other one have 2 thirds. I'm like, I don't want any.
Nice.
My arm was killing me, man. Like I had nothing to do with it. Yeah. So he took the inning. I mean, I don't know what his numbers were that year, but Gagne can afford to take an inning. Like
that was like peak game over. Eric Gagne.
Welcome to the jungle, Eric Gagne. Yeah.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Man, that's great stuff.
We threw in some other names for the Hall of Name today.
Yeah, that's good. That's always a good edition of Hall of Name when we can branch off from the original name. Shout out again, 93 years young, Jack McKeon.
Yeah.
Baseball lifer. Love that.
Yes.
Okay. I think that does it. We're closing in on an hour of this edition of ACC Baseball Etc. I've got some games this week. Do you have your schedule yet? Do you know when your game first game of the season is?
It's the end of April is my first game as of right now that I'm calling. So I have my schedule for studio stuff coming up.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah, every weekend in April. I'm either up in Bristol or I'm doing the show from here. But April, as soon as March Madness is over, I'm getting busy with studio stuff.
Nice.
You know what's going to be even great about going to the studio? I got to throw this in because the NHL guys, we're in the same studio as them. They're like right next door. Last year I was scared, Daron. I was scared to go talk to them. So it's Mark Messier and PK Subban are in there.
Yeah.
I'm going in there this time.
Do it.
I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't care. If they kick me out, they kick me out, but I'm not going to be scared this time.
Incredible. Yeah. Nice. All right. Well, we got a lot of that to look forward to starting next month or within a couple of weeks as soon as March Madness is over. Yep. I've got Coastal Carolina at NC State tomorrow. So Coastal up to 13th in the country.
That's a tough weekday game.
Yeah. I'll have them a couple of times this year, including at North Carolina next month. But looking forward to seeing them because it's Gilmore's swan song. So I get to rap with him a little bit before the game, and we'll do the same.
And Elliot, of course.
Yeah, and Elliot, of course. Although, they just got swept. I don't know how chummy that's going to be. But
yeah. We'll tell him his boys from ACC Baseball Etc are praying for him. Like,
yeah, that's it.
Got to get him happy again.
We're still in it. And then they've got Duke this weekend. So as tough as a week as it was for NC State, it is a pretty brutal week ahead for them. Coastal, and a series against Duke. And
but hey, they can right the ship. They can turn it around, make some noise.
That's it. You could turn it around really quickly. Good opportunity for them. So all right, man. That's it. That's it. That's a solid hour even of ACC Baseball Etc. Presented by Pitch Logic, part of the D1 Baseball Podcast Network. Reminder, we're at ACC BSB ETC on socials. rate, review, subscribe, tell your friends. That's it.
Tell their friends.
Tell your friends it's a top 50 or 60 or so baseball podcast in both the US and Canada. That's it. That's what you tell them.
Yep.
It's going to hook them, and then they're in. So until next
That's
time,
right.
for Danny Graves, I'm Daron Vaught. We'll see you later.